Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. And if you've been with me since January of 2023, you will know that Embracing the Fight is about normalizing the conversations surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. Now, why is that important? Think about it. Who goes around telling you what's wrong with them? People just kind of suffer in silence. And then you start seeing more suicides. You start seeing more people walking into grocery stores, shooting unarmed people for no reason at all, because maybe they're having a mental health episode or issue, but it went undiagnosed. So it's important that we start talking about those things so we can cut it off where it begins. It all starts with one voice, one person being healed at a time. So, with embracing the fight, the idea is to start with that one person. So, if you're interested in being a guest on Embracing the Fight, send me an email to operations@diversitydesigned.com. Also, I would love it if you would click subscribe, click like, comment, and share any podcast that you find on Embracing the Fight. I would gratefully appreciate it. And I love the fact that you took the time out of your day to take a moment to watch Embracing the Fight. Now that I have gotten all the business out of the way, you will see that I have a very beautiful lady on the screen with me today. And I'm going to allow her this moment now to tell you who she is first. And then after she tells you who she is, she's going to tell you how we became connected. But this is episode 88, Behind the Mask. All right. So who are you?
Hey, it's so nice to be here, and thanks for having me. My name's Amy Taylor, and I'm a lot of things. I'm a sister and an aunt and a dog mom, and I've had a hyphenated career like a lot of people. I started in biotech after undergrad, was pretty mediocre at it, also didn't like it, pivoted, did an MBA, worked in oil for many years, took a very small technology / oil company public, ended that job, had at the time, while I was working in oil, became very serious about flying airplanes as a hobby.
Okay.
Turns out, if you want to fly bigger, faster stuff, that gets ludicrously expensive. So because I couldn't afford it, I decided to do it for a living. Basically get somebody else to foot the bill so that I could learn to fly bigger, faster stuff. So then I did that. Starting in the Great Recession of 2008, 9, 10, I got my instructor in commercial and multi-engine instrument tickets and became a flight instructor. I then flew cargo, and I still do that. I still teach flying. I live on the East Coast now, where I went to school and started my careers on the West Coast. And I'm really enjoying New York. And then the last thing I did, and that started when I was 14 years old, and it's always been part-time, is I've done a lot of modeling. But I was never successful enough to make that a full-time career, but it's always been something kind of in my back pocket that I'll shoot a couple of times a month or something if a magazine or a product calls. And even I'm almost 40, I'll be 48 next month, and they still call. It's amazing, but there's a whole genre of, like, they call it gray modeling, and they still want our faces and on products. And so I'm going to keep doing that as long as they keep calling.
Wow. Okay. So now everybody knows why I'm saying behind the mask. Because when people look at you, they see a beautiful woman, but I bet they could never imagine that you've been through so many different stages, in your life. But before we go into that, how did we get connected?
So my assistant contacted you. I like to do broadcasting because of the last part of my very hyphenated, twisty-turny career is that I am a veteran of the sex work industry. It's in its sunset. It got very quickly very boring. I just had a handful of rich boyfriends over the years, as sometimes good-looking women do who have no money, which I was good-looking and broke when I was young. So yeah, I dated rich guys. Most of that was fine. Some very bad things did also happen. I think overall, I would not have done it if I had known. I was super young and naive, as you are. I've relatively survived it, I think, but not unscathed. And I don't think it was a great choice. So I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm just here to tell my story about that. So I do some broadcasting because of that sort of interesting part of my life and the others. And my assistant found you. The reason you piqued my interest personally is because of the nature of your show. I think you're so smart and so strong, and yeah, you're pretty, you look good on camera, all that's great.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that you want to bring positivity and talk about stories where people embrace the fight, literally, where they've encountered really horrible things sometimes and come out of them and dealt with struggles like you personally have,
Right.
and navigated them. I think it's really important for people to hear that, because when you're going through it, you got to keep going, right? You can't
Right.
give up. And there are times in my life that got very dark. And if I had given up, I would have missed a lot of beauty that came after. So I'm glad I hung on. I'm glad you hang on. I'm glad your other guests hang on. And so this show caught my interest because of the nature of your subject.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it. And then just listening to you a moment ago, go through the various iterations of your life. You know, first off, people automatically judge people who have gone into sex work for one reason or the other. And I know they're probably sitting there saying, oh, she was highly educated. She went to college. She did this. She did that. What actually caused you to go in that direction?
Poverty. So, and it was available to me. I was good looking and rich guys liked me and I was broke. So yes, you're correct. I was educated. I went to a public school. I went to UC Berkeley undergrad. It's the cheapest, best education on planet Earth, but it's still not that cheap. You still have to live in the Bay
Right.
Area of California. It's still expensive. My family was classy, but not rich. My
Right.
father was a professor. My mother didn't work. So we had, fancy pedigrees, but we did not have money.
Mhm.
And then my first job in biotech in Northern California after undergrad, I was spending money to work there. The pay was so
Wow.
low that
Mhm.
the apartment, which all I had was a studio in a part of Oakland. I was not living large, and I had an old used car, but the gas and the rent was more than I was making. So it was unsustainable. I could not survive. And I had a rich boyfriend at the time. He was fresh out of med school, so he was making a lot of money. He started paying for everything. Kind of happened. I kind of became like a sugar baby sort of naturally as it happens. Well,
Mhm.
most of human history, women were not given our own money and a man paid for stuff. And that was the track I was obviously heading down toward. He wanted to get married. He was a lot older than me, and I would have been the wife, probably stopped working, and maybe that would have been a better life.
Mhm.
I torpedoed it all and I went to graduate school in LA. It was, for me, my dreams were, I wanted to be more independent, at least for a while. He was the first and only I dated. I did want to date a couple other people. I didn't plan on dating so many. That, yeah, I didn't really plan on it going totally left turn like it did,
Yeah.
but I did have financial need. I did have a freedom need.
Mhm.
And luckily or unluckily, I had heard of it from a sorority sister, kind of put it in the back shelf of my mind. She may
Mhm.
have overly glamorized it because she was at the very privileged end.
Uh-huh.
So my first learning of it was very much biased that it was sort of easy, glamorous, wonderful, which is not always the case.
Right.
But I didn't know that at,
Mhm.
in my mid 20s.
Mhm.
So I probably should have just accepted being very poor, married a doctor, let him be in charge financially, and been a wife with kids in the suburbs of Northern California. That's what I should have done. I
But
didn't,
then your testimony would not be as effective if you had done that.
it wasn't what I wanted. A lot of women would, and it was great. But I just am not, I wanted more freedom. So I go to LA, I do an MBA because with an undergraduate degree in molecular biology, I'm not qualified to do anything else. And it turns out I hate science and I'm not that good at it. Doing something for a living is pretty different from studying it,
It
right?
is.
I should have done an
Absolutely.
internship in biotech and learned that first. So whatever.
Mhm.
The undergraduate degree was fine. It was fun to learn, but it was kind of a waste of 4 years because I had to pivot and get another degree because my resume was good for nothing else. So
Mhm.
I did an MBA, worked in oil, started making my own money. But during my MBA, I was completely broke. He and I broke up. He took back my car. I'm living in LA with negative income. I'm paying for school. And again, what should I have done? Probably drop out and get a job. What did I choose to do? I decided I'd go find another rich boyfriend or two. it's LA. That's pretty common there.
Mhm.
Uh, and I found the internet. I was like, oh, this is how people that are good looking and younger and have financial need find some guy who's 20 years older. And largely it was just dating. It was pretty boring. The second person I met saw me for 10 years. The third
Wow.
person saw me for 18 years. So it pretty much just became relationships. It's not at the very high end, it's actually really boring. It's just dating.
Mhm.
But then the other stuff happened. There are people that are really bad that want to make money off you.
Okay.
And I didn't really think, I didn't come from like the streets. I was very naive. I didn't think that existed. And they did come and start trying to email and call. And I told, a pimp wanted me to sell sex for him. And I said, I'm not selling sex. That's illegal. I'm also not going to give you money because fuck you.
Right.
Excuse my and that was a bad idea because it turns out those people don't be like being told to go shove it.
Mhm.
So that person tried to very badly hurt me. I had to put him in prison. Luckily, I'm alive. Thank God for Phoenix, Arizona police. I'd be dead without them. And that that was, the things in life sometimes that we don't know are the things that affect us the most.
Mhm. And I'm
And
grateful that your story didn't end there.
thank you. Me too.
Because
That would have
because
sucked.
once you were able to close the door on that darkness and then save so many others from going that same path, because I'm sure that guy was probably terrorizing lots of
Yeah.
other women.
People I knew.
And
He was a rapist, convicted of rape in 2006. He was sleeping with lots of colleagues I knew from the internet. And yeah, he was a really bad person. And there's a lot of them. And sex workers die every day at the hands of people like that.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, and I'm glad, and it was awful. My family didn't talk. So he outed me also before he tried to kill me. I didn't, I didn't get to, my family didn't talk to me for over 2 years.
Mhm.
I lost my job. I lost my boyfriend. I miscarried my unborn son, which, I hope I meet someday. It's between me and God now. Um, and so I was able to get justice. It took me years, and a good college buddy of mine who's the best lawyer I know. He's afraid of nothing. He's a good friend from school, and he hates what I did. He's like, really? But he didn't want to see me die. And he kicked this guy's butt in court for me. And I mean, I paid. It cost me a lot of money. It was the best money I ever spent.
Mhm.
And I never collected my judgment that this pimp owes me. It was never about the money. I
Mhm.
just wanted to not die. And it turns out this pimp was a father with a dog. And I guess he's cleaned up his life now. Victim services tells me what they know about his whereabouts. I know where he is. And
Mhm.
apparently he's cleaned up his life, which is good for him too.
It is.
Um, and I don't seek retribution. I just why that kind of evil exists. I think some people think that sex workers are throwaway people.
Mhm.
I think some people think that maybe women are property.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, so yeah, the sex work thing was definitely a mixed bag. There was some really fun, glamorous stuff. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll forever be upset that I can't afford a private jet because yes, they are way better.
Okay.
I'm I'm glad I've seen it. I
Mhm.
will never have one, but they are amazing.
Oh, look, you may
I,
have one.
you
You
know,
may one day.
I don't have it in me. I'm not a boss lady. I just want, at this point in my life, I want peace. I
Mhm.
want people who get into sex work because of poverty when they're young every single day, which they will continue to, they have for all of human history. I want them to survive it because 99% of them only do it for a little while.
Mhm.
And they go on to be wives and mothers, husbands, fathers. I want them to survive. That's all. And whether or not you think it's a great industry, I don't think I do. It
Mhm.
is going to exist. It always has and it always will. And I just want them to survive because you can't, even if you hate sex work and you hate their clients and you hate sex workers, if you're watching this right now and you think it's awful, I don't fault you that. There's a lot of problems with it.
Mhm.
You can't tell me that you think the poor and weakest among us should just die because they made a choice so that they could buy food and shelter when they were young. And they traded on an asset that they had to trade on. Whether you hate that or not, you can't tell me that those are just people who should be disposed of. I
Right.
reject that notion. These are souls that are valuable too. They have lives after this and they deserve to. And so
Absolutely.
I just don't want to see, the Long Island serial killer types doing more of what they do every single day, everywhere in the
Right.
world.
And your platform, do you advocate for those that are in the sex industry to try to help them to get out, or is there anything that you do specifically with advocating?
Yeah, so my family's a little bit political in California. I'll keep the details of that private, but I've done some things in Southern California where I used to live to help. It turns out when like sex workers want to get out, one of the problems they have is the criminal record if they have arrests. Even though it's a misdemeanor, it's sex crime. And so it's almost impossible for them to get a job. And if they do get a job, they don't get treated well because everybody can see what they used to do, especially with the internet now.
Right.
So it's kind of a scarlet letter on you forever because it's sex, right? Which is odd because everybody does that. But whatever. Even porn, which is a legal industry, like it or not. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's a legal industry. Or strippers, right? Not a great industry, but legal. They tend to struggle as being branded forever. And so sometimes they give up and they don't even try to be part of the normal world. So you talk about wanting to get out. A lot of them, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but when they're ready to, it's really hard. People don't let you forget. And then a lot of them don't want out. And it's not for me to tell them how to live their lives just because I disagree, as long as it's consensual and they're not hurting anybody, which is nuanced for sure, right? But I just think that there are industries that are kind of vices, right? Alcohol, drugs, gambling. There are things that are sometimes not great and sometimes they're complicated. I think it's important to reckon with them instead of pretend they don't exist. Right? I'm more interested in the world that is than some utopia that we wish was.
Right.
Yeah. Do I wish nobody ever had to like trade on sex? Yeah, maybe, but it's not ever going to be that way. So let's make it safer. Let's make it better, right? Because we know we can because other places are. New
Right.
Zealand's doing better. Australia is doing better. Most of Europe's doing better. We had in Calcutta, they decriminalized this big brothel area. What happened was the sex workers there felt emboldened to demand condoms because what clients would do is say, if you don't let me take the condom off, I'm going to report you to the cops because you're a criminal. So
Wow.
let me do it raw dog because it feels better, or I'm going to get you in trouble. They'd use the leverage of criminality to push the boundaries of sex workers. When they decriminalized, the sex workers said, no way, you're wearing this condom or later because you can't report me to the cops because my work's not illegal.
Right.
And the HIV rate has gone down 1 or 2% every year for 5 years now.
That is amazing.
And they've recovered a ton of underage traffic victims while spending far less money than America that spent a ton of money and recovered almost nobody. Because when something's criminalized, nobody's going to talk to the cops.
Right.
Nobody does.
That's
so
right.
You can't penetrate. So yeah, so I'm not here to tell people to get out of it because it's not for me to tell other people how to live their lives, but I think we should make it easier for when they want to. And easier even if they're staying in it for a while, which is, even if you don't like it, you just can't think that people should die because they're doing something you don't like. We don't treat drugs that way.
No, we don't.
We have rehab. We don't treat other choices that way. That there's so little compassion for sex work. I think that's the problem. And yes, in some instances it's problematic, but not in all. I know thousands of retired sex workers. Some of them are just fine. I'm not saying they wouldn't be more fine if they hadn't done it, but they're okay.
Right.
So it's like many things, it's complex. And I continue to, there's a politician in Northern California in San Jose who's doing some great things to try to help. And the DA here in New York, we have sex work friendly DAs in New York that a friend of mine just got paid with fake $100 bills the other night. And there's DAs willing to go after the client who ripped her off because, hey, fraud's fraud.
It is. It is. No matter how you package it.
Well, and no DA is saying, yeah, this is the greatest job you could have chosen. But like, it's kind of like when that pimp went after me, 4 judges threw my case out, basically saying that I should die because of a choice that maybe wasn't the best choice. Finally, one judge was like, okay, maybe we don't like what you did, but you don't deserve to be murdered.
Exactly.
Like, there's nuance, right?
Right.
Nuance. When we go to church, nobody's, the old JC didn't ask people to be perfect to be loved either.
Nope. He sure did.
because none of us are, right?
Absolutely not.
So
Okay.
it's, and I don't know that it'll ever be problem free as an industry, but I think, New Zealand's, Belgium, they're allowing them to to get healthcare benefits. In this country, if you tell your health insurance company that you're a sex worker, oh, you're going to get canceled, but
Mhm.
not there. They know that it reduces disease if you give them healthcare, right? Just
Right.
they pay in just like everybody else. So what do you want to do? You want to reduce disease transfer because
That's
it's
right.
not an island, right? So
That's right.
yeah, it's so I try to do what I can. I get told I'm a gross old woman every single day. I do not care. I don't care. It's the internet.
You're not a gross old woman.
Whatever, the internet's got opinions, but I do also get told, I get emails every day that people are like, I've never seen a person who did sex work who's just a human being. And I was like, well, you probably know lots of them. You just don't know it.
Right.
Right.
Because people don't want to tell you because they know what you're going to project onto them for the choices that they made, which is absolutely wrong.
It makes
But,
me uncomfortable, but I don't
right.
mind. I don't mind.
But just having this conversation with you, from going from the darkest times, somehow you went from there and then you went into modeling. So you use your beauty and your brains to step into a totally different industry. How did you do that? Were you found or did you go to a casting call?
So when I was 14, the scout came up to me in a mall. I was with my dad, and my dad was very concerned that it was like some creep. And I guess I got lucky because it just wasn't. He was a real photographer who had a real agency.
Good.
And now it was Northern California outside of San Francisco. So it wasn't like I was in Paris or Milan where there'd be a lot of work.
Hmm.
But there was, a few small clothing brands. And I did like runway shows at Macy's in my mall, junior league fashion shows, stuff like that. Um, and I liked it. But it wasn't until I moved to LA for my MBA
Hmm.
later that there was a lot of glamour modeling. I did all the major magazines, and then I did fitness into my 30s, like Muscle and Fitness Hers, Sports Illustrated, GQ,
Hmm.
because there's just a lot of that in LA. And I liked it because, being around beauty and creativity, it's not my world. I was a science person and a pilot. I'm kind of a left brain geeky type. I'm not good at fashion or makeup or hair, but I like being around people who are because it's a different form of intelligence that I don't have.
Hmm.
Being on set is fun. And those people are the way they see color and light and shadows is totally different than me. Uh, and then yeah, it's not the most intellectually interesting job. You literally just stand there and look pretty.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not like flying a plane or working in biotech where you're stimulated intellectually, but it's
Right.
fun. And it does create a non-negotiable reason that you need to stay healthy, which I think I really liked. If you're 3 weeks out from a fitness shoot,
Hmm.
have to get your diet together.
Right.
You can't do it unhealthily if you're dehydrated, you're going to look like crap. If you, uh, yeah, your skin, your hair, your nails. So and I never did runway or editorial. I'm way too short. So I
Hmm.
didn't ever have to look the real tall, skinny part. I don't look like that. And so I was never hired for that. So luckily I didn't have to be like bony. Uh, but I did like that, much like scheduling a race, like a 5K, or bodybuilders will schedule a competition. You kind of have this thing on your calendar that makes you like get it together.
Hmm.
So I think I did like that part of modeling, is that it created a reason I had to stay healthy. I think I would have anyway, but it became a like you talk about when you have to get your diet together, as you've talked
Yep.
about on other episodes. If you have to, you do,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I've done it part-time, and I'll do it part-time. I got to shoot next week. I'll do it. I'll do it until they stop calling.
I know you were saying something about they look for silver models. I find that very interesting.
Yeah,
You
it's a
know, so
huge part of the industry now.
so how did you actually come upon that? How did you find out about that?
Well, yeah, it's a thing. I know many others, and it does transition. Like, okay, like FHM and Playboy and all those, they kind of tend to like you in your 20s or 30s, although there's some women over 40 in Playboy, the token cougary type, but they the fashion world, I think they may have figured out that if you're trying to get people to buy your brands, guess who has all the money? Old people. um, And people want to see, it is partially a fantasy. People do like beauty. They do. That's why makeup sells. That's why we blow dry our hair.
Right.
But they don't totally want to see somebody that they could never look like, right? It's sort of,
Right.
you want an idealized version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really democratized. So yes, there are older women in it, but sadly or not, you probably are getting some Botox and maybe a facelift later. So it's an idealized version. It's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
The body shapes are democratized. You're seeing women who are curvier, shorter, taller, different races finally, because they realize the gatekeepers who I think thought that you only had to be 16 years old,
Mm-hmm.
white, tall, anorexic, blonde.
Yeah.
They forgot that other people want to see a beautiful version of themselves on screen or in the magazine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants to see us the way nobody wants to see me the way I woke up looking this morning. Nobody wants that. That's not going to sell. Well, look when I'm walking my
Depending
dog.
on what they're selling.
Oh, with this, I'm only a quarter Jewish, but I have what I like to call Jewfro, and no one wants to see that. So, yes, it's still a sculpted version of reality. There's still Photoshop and post-production, lights and makeup and all that. But they are putting older people on because not every old person looking to buy a product wants to see it used on a 19-year-old face that doesn't even need it.
Right.
Right.
That's kind of like that shapewear. You see these little skinny ladies putting on shapewear. It's
Yeah, you're not wearing that. You don't need that.
like, right.
No, you need my like this. That's what goes in it.
Yeah. We're not gonna show mine. You can see my own.
Well, look, in terms of what I did learn in sex work is that men don't like, one said to me once years ago, he said, you know what a bony woman can do for me? Absolutely nothing. Like, they're not the ones who like super skinny. Like on the runway, the clothing should hang. So that's why they're tall and skinny, because the clothing looks really good walking down the aisle. And they're young because there's no Photoshop on the runway. So they have to actually be perfect skin and, they're young.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not a real big fan of porn because I think for some people it's an addiction. I don't think it should be illegal though, because also that doesn't get rid of it, criminalizing it. That said, some of this OnlyFans stuff, which I don't do porn, no judgment to those who do, but some of this OnlyFans has actually given some women a better body positivity because they've realized that there's all kinds of shapes and sizes on the old OnlyFans, and they have millions of fans, and they're not just skinny little blonde girls. You don't have to be that to be desirable. And I'm sort of joking about a positive effect of porn, but everything has an upside, right? I mean, gray modeling, is it great that they're putting on older women with Botox and saying that it's natural? Probably not, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I love it that we're seeing different races, different shapes, different ages. I like it.
I think that's amazing. I might even look into it too.
You should look at your face.
Plus size models. Thank you. Plus size models. I got all kinds of silver going on here. So
you're beautiful.
I'd be interested to know.
Here's the thing. If you the more you get on the internet and the more, they have like model management, model mayhem, you can get on there and do test shoots and get a portfolio. People will love you and hate you anyway. So you might as well make yourself happy.